Triplets return billionaire stolen wallet. It was the kids he's searching for. The storm was already breaking when Camille Johnson wrestled 2 heavy bags of groceries out of the sliding doors of the corner store. Her triplets tugged at her hands, restless and wild, as only 4-year-olds could be. "Stay close," she warned, her voice sharp with fatigue. But Marcus, the most curious of the 3, spotted something on the cracked pavement near the parking lot. His little fingers darted out before Camille could stop him. "Mommy, look, a wallet!" he shouted, holding up sleek black leather. The thing looked heavy, thick with money and cards. Camille's stomach dropped. "Lord, not today." Before she could snatch it away, a tall figure cut across the lot like a thundercloud. His stride was sharp, his suit a perfect grey, tailored to broad shoulders, shoes polished like mirrors. His presence made people part like water. "Who touched my wallet?" The man's voice cracked like a whip. The triplets froze. Shoppers nearby stopped to stare. Camille's back stiffened as the stranger's gaze landed on her. Hard, dark, and merciless. "It wasn't like that," she said quickly, pushing the wallet down. "My son just found it." "You expect me to believe a child just happened to pick up $10,000? His tone was dripping contempt, cold enough to freeze her bones. People don't return things like this. They steal. Heat flared in Camille's chest. The humiliation stung. She knew what he saw. A broke black woman with 3 kids clinging to her, standing under the harsh glow of street lamps. Easy to accuse, easy to dismiss. "You got a lot of nerve," Camille snapped, raising her chin. "My children don't steal, Mr. Suit and Tie. They got more honesty in their little fingers than you got in your whole rich body." A ripple went through the onlookers. The man's eyes narrowed, but something flickered when he looked down at the triplets. Marcus clutched the wallet stubbornly. Maya's curls bounced as she frowned up at him, fearless. Jordan tilted his head, curious, studying the stranger like he was familiar. And for the first time, the man hesitated. His jaw tightened. His gaze lingered on their faces as if searching for something. "Give it back, Mommy," Marcus said softly. "It's his, Daddy's wallet." The word cut the air in two. Daddy. Camille's breath caught. The billionaire's head snapped toward her, eyes like burning coal. Something dangerous flashed there. Not just suspicion, but recognition. He took the wallet slowly, deliberately, his fingers brushing Marcus's small hand. For just a second, his expression cracked, the mask of steel slipping. "Who are you?" His voice was low now, almost a growl. Camille pulled her kids close, fire blazing in her chest, even as fear twisted her stomach. "I'm the mother of these children," she snapped. "That's all you need to know. Now get out of our way." She shoved past him, triplets in tow, but his gaze burned into her back like a brand. Damien Blackwell's jaw clenched. He pulled out his phone without looking away. "Follow her," he told his security chief. "Name, address, job. I want everything." The guard nodded. Damien slid the wallet back into his pocket, but his hands trembled ever so slightly. Those children, their eyes, their faces. Number it couldn't be, but it was too much of a coincidence. This wasn't over. The next evening, Camille's tiny apartment smelled of spaghetti and fried chicken grease. She had just wrangled the triplets into their pajamas when a knock thundered at the door. Her heart jumped. No one knocked like that in this neighborhood. "Stay back," she whispered, shoving the kids behind her as she cracked the door, and froze. Damien Blackwell filled the doorway like a shadow, the expensive scent of his cologne seeping into her modest living room. He wasn't alone. 2 suited men loomed behind him, but with a curt flick of his wrist, he dismissed them. "You followed me?" Camille hissed, fury sparking in her chest. His eyes, dark and unreadable, swept the apartment. The peeling paint, the thrift store furniture, The toys scattered across the carpet. Then they landed on the triplets, who peeked out from behind her legs. "You're raising my children here?" he said flatly. The words hit like a slap. Camille shoved the door open, stepping fully into his space, chin tilted. "Excuse me? Your children? You don't know me, and you sure as hell don't know them." Damien's gaze burned. "I know enough. Their faces, their eyes. It's undeniable." Camille's blood boiled. He couldn't just walk into her life, into their lives, with his arrogance and money and claim what he'd abandoned years ago. He hadn't even recognized her, just like back then, when he'd disappeared after one night, leaving her to carry the weight alone. "You think flashing some cash gives you the right to walk in here and play daddy?" She spat. Damien slipped something from his jacket pocket. A check. He placed it on her counter with surgical precision. The zeros shimmered beneath the cheap light bulb. "For their care," he said coldly. "I can provide what you clearly can't." The insult burned worse than fire. Camille snatched the check, crumpled it in her fist, and hurled it back at his chest. "My kids don't need your money," she snapped. "They need love. They need stability. And you're not that." Behind her, little Maya's voice piped up. "Mommy, is he really our daddy?" The question shattered the air. Damien's jaw flexed, his gaze softening just for a heartbeat as his eyes flicked to the girl. Something dangerous shifted in him, a longing he didn't want to admit. He stepped closer to Camille, his voice dropping to a low growl meant only for her. "This isn't over," he said. "You can slam the door in my face tonight, but I will find the truth. And when I do—" He leaned in, so close she could smell the faint trace of whiskey on his breath. "Nothing in this world will stop me from claiming what's mine." Camille's breath hitched. Anger warred with fear, and something else she refused to name. She slammed the door in his face. The triplets clung to her legs, confused, whispering questions. Camille held them tight, her heart pounding in her chest. But deep down, she knew. Damien Blackwell wasn't bluffing, and this was only the beginning. The night was restless. Camille sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the shadows dancing across the ceiling. The triplets were finally asleep, curled together like puppies, their soft breathing the only thing keeping her from breaking apart completely. Her mind replayed Damien Blackwell's words, that deep growl promising he'd come for what's his. Her hands shook. She pressed her palms to her face. She had never forgotten him. 19 years old, still in community college, waiting tables at a charity gala downtown, she had no business attending. One night, one mistake. She hadn't even known his real name then. Just D, the man in the tailored suit, who had looked at her like she was more than a waitress. The man who whispered promises in her ear before disappearing at dawn. And 3 months later, when her stomach began to swell, he was already gone. Camille's chest tightened. She had carried the triplets alone. She had given up college, picked up double shifts, endured stares, pity, and laughter. And now, after all those years of struggle, he waltzed back into her life with a check and a sneer. Number, he wasn't taking them. Across the city, Damien sat in his penthouse office, whiskey glass untouched in his hand. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Atlanta skyline, but his mind was elsewhere. The children's faces, their eyes, his eyes. "Sir?" His head of security, Harris, entered quietly. "We've gathered information on the woman, Camille Johnson, 24, works double shifts at a diner, single mother, clean record, no priors, no history of drugs or trouble. She's—" "Poor," Damien cut in, his voice low. "Barely surviving." Harris hesitated. "Yes, sir, but she's respected. Everyone describes her as hard-working, protective of her kids." Damien's jaw clenched. Something about those words dug beneath his armor. He shook it off. Schedule a paternity test, Damien ordered, setting the glass down with a sharp clink. Quietly, no headlines. I want answers. 2 days later, Camille trudged into the diner for her shift, only to be greeted by whispers. The manager pulled her aside, eyes full of discomfort. Camille, I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to let you go. Too much bad publicity. People are saying things. Camille's face flushed hot. What people? The answer came quickly. Damien's world bleeding into hers. Gossip blogs had already started spinning stories. Billionaire linked to single mother in the hood. Her paycheck, gone. Her kids' food, threatened. Her pride, ripped raw. Camille stormed outside, clutching her apron. The world tilted, and then, to her horror, a sleek black car pulled up. The window rolled down. Damien's cold eyes met hers. Get in, he said, voice like steel. Camille's fists clenched. You did this. I protected you, he countered. If I hadn't buried worse rumors, you'd be on the front page by now. Camille trembled with rage, but her voice was steady. You think ruining my life gives you the right to own me? Damien leaned back, his jaw flexing, watching her with that same infuriating calm. Not own, he said quietly, but if those children are mine, then so are you. Camille's heart slammed against her ribs. She wanted to scream, to slap him, to run, but the truth was already clawing at her. What if he was right? Get in, he repeated, voice low and commanding. Camille's pulse thundered in her ears. Every instinct screamed no. She wanted to tell him to take his money, his arrogance, his entire empire and choke on it. She wanted to march home to her babies, kiss their curls, and forget this man ever existed. But she couldn't, because his shadow was already in her life, darkening everything it touched, because the triplets deserved the truth, no matter how painful, because deep down, beneath layers of fury and fear, she knew, if those children were his, nothing would ever be the same again. With a sharp inhale, Camille yanked open the car door and slid inside. The interior smelled like leather and power. The silence was suffocating. Damien didn't speak as the car pulled away, his profile carved in steel against the city lights. His hands rested loosely on his thighs, but tension radiated from him in waves. Finally, Camille broke. You think you can just bulldoze into my life, take away the only income I had, and then order me around like I'm one of your employees? Her voice shook, but not from fear, from rage. You don't know me. You don't know what I've survived to raise those children. You... Stop! Damien cut her off, his voice cold, clipped. He turned to face her fully, and for a heartbeat, she almost flinched at the intensity in his eyes. I don't care about your pride, he said, each word deliberate. I care about the truth, and until I have it, we'll both be standing in this storm. I need to know if they are mine. The words hung between them, heavier than iron. Camille's throat tightened. She wanted to scream yes, just to hurt him. She wanted to scream no to shut the door on this nightmare. But the truth was complicated. They're mine, she whispered fiercely, blinking back hot tears. Mine. I carried them. I bled for them. I worked 2 jobs to keep them fed. Where were you then, Mr. Blackwell? Where was your money, your protection, when I was 19 and scared out of my mind? Damien's jaw flexed. A shadow flickered in his eyes, something dangerously close to guilt. I didn't know, he said, quieter now. If I had... You didn't bother to find out, she snapped, her voice breaking. You disappeared. You left me alone with 3 babies and a world that laughed in my face. The car lurched to a stop. Camille blinked, realizing they were no longer on the city streets, but outside a private medical building, its marble facade glowing beneath spotlights. What is this? She demanded. Damien's gaze locked on hers. The test, The clinic was silent, sterile, a world of glass and steel. A nurse ushered them in without hesitation, clearly expecting them. Damien's influence stretched here too, bending rules and smoothing paths with invisible hands. Camille sat stiffly in the waiting room, the triplets on either side of her. Damien stood near the window, his tall frame a dark silhouette against the glowing skyline. Marcus fidgeted. "Mummy, what are we doing here?" Camille smoothed his curls, forcing a smile. "Just answering questions, baby." Maya tilted her head, curious. "Is he really our daddy?" The words pierced like knives. Camille's breath stuttered. She looked at Damien, who hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but whose shoulders had gone rigid at the child's innocent question. Finally, a nurse appeared. "We'll just need a quick swab, Mr. Blackwell, Ms. Johnson, children." The test was over in minutes. Sterile cotton swabs, labeled vials, clinical efficiency. But to Camille, it felt like her entire life had been measured and sealed into those tiny tubes. When it was done, the nurse smiled politely. "Results in 48 hours. The drive back was a battlefield of silence. Camille stared out the window, blinking hard against the tears threatening to spill. Damien sat rigid, his jaw tight, his fists clenched on his knees. Finally, he spoke. "If they are mine," he said, voice low, "everything changes. They'll have the life they deserve, the best schools, the best care. They'll never want for anything again." Camille's head snapped around. "And what about me?" He met her gaze, unflinching. "You made your choices, but if those children carry my blood, they're Blackwells, and Blackwells do not live in poverty." Her chest heaved. "You think money fixes everything, don't you? You think you can walk in with your millions and erase the years I spent crying myself to sleep, praying I'd have enough to buy diapers, enough to pay rent?" Her voice cracked, raw with fury and grief. "Those kids don't care about your empire. They care about love, something you clearly don't know how to give." For the first time, Damien's mask slipped, his gaze darkened, not with anger, but with something heavier. Loneliness, wounds he kept buried deep. "You don't know me," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Camille leaned in, her eyes blazing. "And you don't know them." The car pulled up to her apartment. She climbed out without another word, clutching her children to her like armor. Damien didn't stop her. He only watched, his hand tightening into a fist at his side. 48 hours. That was all it would take. 48 hours to discover the truth that could bind them forever. And Damien Blackwell had already decided. Once he had proof, he would never let them go. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. It pelted the cracked windows of Camille's apartment, drummed against the roof, and turned the narrow streets into rivers of mud. Camille sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall clock. Each tick sounded like a countdown to doom. 48 hours. That's what the nurse had promised. Her heart thudded with every second. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten more than a bite of toast in 2 days. The triplets sensed her tension, clinging to her legs, whispering questions she had no answers for. She knew what the results would say. Deep down, she had always known. The knock came just after sundown, heavy, decisive, the sound of a man who expected every door to open at his command. Camille's stomach twisted. She pulled the door open to find Damien Blackwell standing in the rain, his suit immaculate despite the storm. Behind him, one of his security men held an envelope, sealed with the clinic's crest. Camille's breath caught. The results. "Let me in," Damien said quietly. Against her better judgment, she stepped aside. The apartment seemed smaller with him inside, his presence filling every corner. The triplets peeked out from their bedroom, wide-eyed. Damien's gaze flickered toward them, his face unreadable, before he turned back to Camille. He took the envelope from his man, dismissed him, and then stood there in the middle of her living room. His fingers brushed over the seal once before tearing it open. Camille's heart slammed against her ribs. Damien's eyes scanned the paper. His jaw tightened, his nostrils flared, and then he looked up, his gaze locking onto hers like a weapon. 99.9%, he said flatly. They're mine. The room spun. Camille gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. She had known, but hearing him say it, ripped something open inside her. Damien's voice was low, dangerous. You kept my children from me for 4 years. Her fury ignited. Kept! You make it sound like I had a choice. You disappeared. You didn't call. You didn't look for me. I didn't know. His voice thundered, echoing off the thin walls. The triplets jumped, eyes wide. Damien lowered his tone, but the anger in his eyes still burned. If I had known, I never would have... He stopped himself, fists clenching at his sides. Camille stepped closer, fire in her veins. Never would have what? Left me alone? Left me pregnant and broke while you sat in your glass tower counting billions? For a moment, silence. Rain lashed the window. The children huddled in the doorway, watching with confusion in their innocent eyes. Damien's gaze softened as it flicked toward them, then hardened again when it returned to Camille. I can't change the past, but I can change now. Those children are Blackwell's. From this moment on, they will live like it. Camille's voice cracked. You think money makes you a father? His jaw flexed. Money gives them the safety you can't, the opportunities you never had. And if you think I'm going to let my heirs grow up in this... His eyes swept the cramped apartment, the peeling paint, the second-hand furniture. You're mistaken. Her hands shook. She wanted to claw at him, to scream until her voice was gone. Instead, she laughed bitterly. Safety? Opportunities? Do you know what they've had here? Love, stability, a mother who's been there for every fever, every scraped knee, every nightmare. They don't need your penthouse. They need me. Then they'll have both, Damien said, his voice like steel, froze. What? I'm not taking them from you, he said quietly. But I will not be a stranger in their lives. From today I am their father. They will know me. They will live as Blackwells. Her heart thundered, torn between rage and a strange, terrifying relief. For years she had carried the weight alone. Now suddenly he was here, demanding, forceful, unstoppable. You don't get to make that decision, she snapped, though her voice trembled. They're my children. Our children, Damien corrected, his eyes narrowing. And I don't ask. I take what's mine. Her breath caught. For a dangerous second, the air between them shifted. His presence pressed down on her, overwhelming, magnetic. She hated him. She hated how close he stood, how the heat of his body made her pulse race against her will. The triplets broke the moment. Marcus toddled forward, clutching a stuffed bear. Are you really our daddy? He asked softly. Damien froze. His eyes darkened, his mask slipping for just a heartbeat. Slowly, he bent down to meet Marcus's gaze. Yes, he said quietly, his voice rough. I am. The boy studied him, then smiled a little. Do you like pancakes? Damien blinked, startled, then glanced at Camille. For the first time, something almost like a smile tugged at the corner of his lips. I'll learn to, he murmured. Camille's chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. The triplets crowded around, curious, touching Damien's polished shoes, his expensive watch. He let them, stiff at first, then softer, his large hand awkwardly patting Jordan's curls. Camille watched, torn apart inside. The sight of them with him, her children, his children, was too much. Finally she found her voice. Get out! Damien's eyes snapped to hers. "No!" Her fists clenched. "This is my home, my rules. Get out, or so help me." He stepped closer, his voice low but unyielding. "This isn't over, Camille. You can hate me. You can slam every door in my face. But you will not keep me from them. I swear it." Her breath shook, their eyes locked, fire against fire, until she finally shoved the door open. "Get out!" For a long moment he didn't move. Then he straightened, smoothed his suit, and turned toward the rain. But before he left, he paused in the doorway, his voice drifting back like a promise, or a threat. "They're mine, Camille, and soon, so will you." The door slammed shut. Camille collapsed against it, tears burning her eyes. The triplets tugged at her arms, asking questions she couldn't answer. She buried her face in her hands, whispering to herself. This is the beginning of the end. Camille had barely slept in 3 nights. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Damien's face, cold, determined, unrelenting. His words echoed in her ears like a curse. "They're mine, Camille, and soon, so will you." She sat on the worn sofa, knees tucked beneath her, while the triplets played with mismatched toys on the living room rug. Their laughter should have been her peace, but instead it hollowed her chest, because every giggle, every smile, every bright-eyed glance at the world reminded her how easily Damien could take it all away. She had survived on pride and grit for 4 years. Now pride felt like paper against his fire. The knock came at 9 a.m. sharp. Camille stiffened. She didn't need to look to know who it was. She opened the door just enough to glare out. Damien stood there, immaculate as always. Dark suit pressed, tie precise, cologne sharp enough to sting her nose. Behind him, a sleek black SUV idled. "Morning," he said, his voice smooth but edged. "What do you want?" His gaze slid past her to the triplets, who had noticed him instantly. Marcus's face lit up. "It's Daddy." Camille's stomach twisted. "Don't call him that," she snapped. Damien's eyes flickered, but he crouched down, extending his hand toward the children. "Good morning." The triplets rushed to the door, grinning, chattering over one another. "Do you like Legos? Can you read us a story? Mommy makes pancakes, but only on Saturdays. Do you eat pancakes?" Damien's lips twitched, the barest ghost of a smile. He glanced at Camille. "Let me in." Her hands tightened on the doorframe. "No." "Camille," he said softly, dangerously, "don't make this harder than it needs to be." "It's already harder than it needs to be." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "You can't just show up and play father because you have a last name worth billions." His eyes sharpened. "I don't play." I claim. Her fury flared. "They're not trophies. They're children. They're mine." "Our children," he corrected, standing to his full height, towering over her. "And whether you like it or not, I will be in their lives." For a moment their stares clashed, hot enough to scorch the air between them. The triplets bounced with excitement, oblivious to the war raging above their heads. Finally, Camille exhaled shakily and pulled the door wider. 10 minutes, she muttered. Damien stepped inside. He didn't belong here. The apartment was small, cluttered, alive with crayons and plastic toys. Damien looked like a polished statue dropped in the middle of chaos. He stood stiffly at first, but the triplets swarmed him, tugging at his hands, showing him their drawings. Maya pushed a paper into his palm. "That's me, that's Mommy, that's Marcus, that's Jordan." Damien studied the stick figures with surprising seriousness. "And where am I?" Maya tilted her head. "You weren't here then." The words hit harder than any blow. Something flickered in Damien's expression before he carefully folded the paper and slid it into his suit pocket. Camille watched, arms crossed, torn between anger and a strange ache. He looked out of place. yet the way the kids clung to him was natural, almost frighteningly so. When Marcus tugged on his hand, begging him to sit, Damien lowered himself onto the rug, expensive trousers wrinkling without complaint. He let the boy pile blocks into his lap, even helped stack them into a crooked tower. Camille's chest tightened. She hated how easily he slipped into their world, even for a moment. After 10 minutes, she cleared her throat. "That's enough." Damien rose smoothly. The triplets groaned, begging him to stay. "Tomorrow," he said simply, brushing invisible lint from his sleeve. "No," Camille snapped. "Yes." His gaze locked on hers. "I'll be back tomorrow, and the day after, until they know me." Her nails bit into her palms. "You can't bully your way into fatherhood." His lips curved in a humorless smile. "Watch me." By the end of the week, Damien was there daily, sometimes with toys, sometimes with books, once with 3 child-sized bikes that made Camille's chest burn with humiliation. "I don't want your charity," she hissed when he wheeled them up the apartment stairs. His eyes glittered. "It isn't charity, it's my duty." The triplets squealed with delight, pedaling in circles, oblivious to their mother's fury. At night, when Camille tucked them in, she tried to erase his presence with bedtime stories and lullabies, but their whispers broke her. "Daddy said he'll teach me to swim. Daddy said he'll come to my school play. Daddy said he's going to buy us a puppy." Each word was a knife. By the second week, Damien escalated. He showed up not just with gifts, but with lawyers. Camille nearly choked when she opened her door to find a crisp envelope handed to her by a paralegal. Inside, legal documents, custody petitions. Her hands shook as she scanned the words: joint custody, visitation rights, court hearings. Her vision blurred. She stormed outside, where Damien was waiting by his SUV, arms crossed. "Are you kidding me?" she shouted. His gaze was cool, calm. "You knew this was coming. You think you can just take them from me, tear their lives apart?" "No," he said firmly. "I think I can give them more than this." His hand gestured to the building, peeling paint, broken stair rails, the stench of mildew. "They deserve better, and they'll have it." Tears burned Camille's eyes, but her fury roared louder. "You can line the courtroom with your gold. You can buy judges, lawyers, whatever you want. But you'll never buy me, and you'll never buy their love." For the first time, Damien's mask cracked. His voice dipped lower, dangerous, almost pleading. "I don't want to buy them, Camille. I want what's mine." Camille's chest heaved. "Then fight me in court, because I will never hand them over." They stood there, face to face, 2 worlds colliding. His empire of steel and glass, her fortress of stubborn love. Neither moved, neither blinked. Finally, Damien's voice cut the air, soft but lethal. "This is war, Camille, and I don't lose." He slid into his car, the door slamming shut with finality. The SUV pulled away, leaving her trembling on the curb, clutching the papers like broken glass. That night, Camille sat at the kitchen table long after the children had fallen asleep. The legal documents lay spread before her, stark black letters on white paper spelling the threat she had feared since the day Damien Blackwell re-entered her life. She buried her face in her hands. Tears slipped between her fingers, hot and bitter. She thought of the triplets' laughter when Damien built block towers with them, of their excited whispers about him at night. And for the first time, she let herself admit the truth. He was already inside their hearts, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The summons came on a Saturday morning, not through a polite invitation, not even a phone call, but through a chauffeur in a black suit standing at Camille's door with a clipped message. "Mr. Blackwell requests your presence. The children too." Camille folded her arms. "Requests?" she repeated coldly. The man didn't flinch. "Insists. Her first instinct was to slam the door in his face, but the triplets overheard. Maya squealed, "Daddy wants us!" Marcus bounced in excitement, and Jordan already had his shoes in his hands. Camille's heart sank. She could not keep resisting without hurting them. And so, with her chin lifted high and fury boiling beneath her skin, she let herself be herded into a glossy limousine with 3 bouncing children. The ride through Atlanta was silent for her, but alive with questions from the kids. Does Daddy have toys? Does Daddy live in a castle? Does Daddy have a swimming pool? Camille clenched her fists in her lap. He's just a man, she said firmly. Don't expect anything more. But even she wasn't prepared for what awaited them. The Blackwell estate rose like something out of another world. A wrought-iron gate swung open to reveal a sprawling mansion, its white stone walls gleaming against manicured gardens, and fountains that glittered like diamonds under the morning sun. Marble steps led up to massive doors taller than any she'd ever seen. The triplets gasped in unison. "It is a castle," Maya whispered. Camille's throat tightened. She wanted to hate it, to scoff at its excess, but even she was silenced by the scale of it all. And then Damien appeared. He descended the steps like a king surveying his kingdom. Dark suit, sharp, eyes colder than steel, his presence commanding every inch of the vast estate. "Welcome," he said simply, though his gaze softened almost imperceptibly as it lingered on the triplets. Camille's spine straightened. "Don't welcome me like this is some fairy tale. We're only here because you dragged us." His lips twitched. "Dragged? Your children seemed thrilled." Indeed, the triplets were already tugging free, racing toward the fountains with squeals of delight. Damien let them go, watching them as if cataloguing every movement, every smile. He turned to Camille. "Let them see what's possible." Her eyes burned. "You think chandeliers and marble floors make you a father? You think this house erases the years you left us struggling?" Damien's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he gestured toward the doors. "Come inside." The mansion swallowed her whole. Marble floors gleamed like ice. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceilings. Oil paintings worth more than her entire neighborhood lined the halls. Every step Camille took felt like trespassing. The children ran wild, touching, gasping, laughing. Maya twirled in the grand foyer. Marcus pressed his face to a 12-foot aquarium. Jordan ran circles around a spiral staircase. Camille followed slowly, shame prickling her skin. She felt the eyes of Damien's staff, maids in crisp uniforms, a butler with an arched brow, guards standing too still. Their stares pierced her thrift store dress, her scuffed shoes. They didn't see her as a guest. They saw her as an intruder. Damien walked beside her, silent but alert. He noticed her stiff posture, the way she kept tugging her sleeves down to hide the fraying cuffs. He said nothing, but his eyes missed nothing. Finally, he led her into a dining hall, so vast it made her dizzy. A table stretched the length of the room, set with silver and crystal. The children scrambled into chairs far too big for them. A maid appeared with platters of food, steaming pancakes, fresh fruit, eggs cooked to perfection. The triplets dug in immediately, giggling through mouthfuls, their small faces glowing with joy. Camille, however, could barely touch her plate. She sat rigid, aware of every servant watching, every whisper hidden behind polite smiles. Damien leaned back in his chair, studying her. "They look happy." She shot him a glare. "They're children. They'd be happy with pancakes at Waffle House. Don't fool yourself into thinking this is about you." "Yet they asked me to teach them to swim," he countered smoothly. "They want me here." Her chest squeezed. "You're confusing them." His voice lowered. "Or maybe I'm showing them the truth they've been denied." Her hand slammed against the table before she could stop herself. The children jumped, startled. "Don't you dare!" she hissed, voice shaking with fury. "Don't you dare make this about me holding them back. I gave up everything for them. I worked until my body broke just to keep them clothed and fed. You—" her voice cracked, tears burning her eyes. "You weren't there." For the first time, silence settled over Damien. He didn't defend himself, didn't spit back his usual steel-edged words. He simply looked at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Finally, he said quietly, "You're right. I wasn't there, but I am now, and I won't leave again." Camille's breath hitched. She hated how sincere he sounded, how his voice wrapped around her like a promise. She looked away, swallowing hard. After breakfast, Damien took them on a tour. The children ran through hallways lined with Persian rugs, climbed into canopy beds, and squealed at the sight of a swimming pool glittering like liquid sapphire. Camille stayed back, arms crossed, trying not to cry. They looked so small, so thrilled, so unaware of the war between their parents. At the end of the tour, Damien gathered them in the grand hall. His voice was gentle as he knelt to their level. "This is your home too now. You can come here any time." The triplets beamed. Camille's chest caved in. She pulled them close, her voice sharp. "Number, this is not your home. Home is with me." Damien's eyes met hers across the children's heads, unyielding. "It's both." Her heart raced. She wanted to scream, to drag the children out and never look back. But when Marcus tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Mommy, can we stay a little longer?" her knees went weak. She realized then that she was losing, not just to Damien's wealth or his power, but to the simple truth the children loved him already. And he knew it. As she finally gathered them to leave, Damien stepped closer, his voice low enough only she could hear. "You can fight me in court. You can hate me every step of the way. But they'll choose me, Camille, because I give them what you can't." Her chin trembled. "And what's that?" His gaze burned into hers, dark and merciless. "The world." She shoved past him, her children clinging to her hands, but his words followed her like chains. The world, and she feared he might be right. Camille had never set foot in a lawyer's office before. The walls of polished mahogany, the gleaming certificates in gold frames, the heavy scent of leather, and old books, it all made her feel small. But she sat straight-backed, chin lifted, the triplets' faces burned into her mind. "I need full custody," she told the attorney, her voice steady, though her hands trembled in her lap. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed black woman in her 50s named Ms. Parker, raised a brow. "That's a tall order when the father is Damien Blackwell." Camille swallowed. "I don't care. He's trying to take them. My babies. They're all I've got. He can't just walk in with his billions and think he can—" "Ms. Johnson," Ms. Parker cut her off gently but firmly. "That's exactly what he thinks, and the courts tend to agree with men like him. But if you want to fight, we'll fight." Camille's chest swelled with determination. "Then file the papers. I won't let him win." Damien was in his office, 20 floors above Atlanta's skyline, when his phone buzzed. His lawyer slid a folder across his desk. "Johnson has filed for full custody." Damien's dark eyes flicked over the documents, then up to the lawyer. A slow, humorless smile curved his lips. "Good," he murmured. "Let her try." He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Prepare our counterclaim. Joint custody. I want visitation rights locked in, effective immediately." His lawyer hesitated. "You're certain you want to fight this so aggressively? It could get messy." Damien's eyes hardened. "She thinks she can keep them from me." She has no idea who she's dealing with. I don't lose. The first hearing came faster than Camille expected. She dressed the children in their best, which meant clean shirts and shoes without holes, and wore the only blazer she owned, borrowed from her neighbor. Her stomach twisted as she entered the courthouse. Damien was already there, a black suit draped over his tall frame like armor, lawyers flanking him like soldiers. He didn't even look at her when she entered, but she felt the weight of his presence. The triplets clung to her hands, whispering, "Mummy, is this like TV? Are they gonna ask us questions?" Her heart broke. She crouched down, kissed their foreheads. "No, babies, just stay quiet and sit with me." Inside the courtroom, the tension crackled. The judge, a stern man with grey hair, called the case. Papers shuffled. Lawyers spoke in sharp voices. Words like custody rights, primary caretaker, financial stability filling the air. Camille's chest pounded as Damien's lawyer painted her life in ugly strokes. A rundown apartment, an unstable job history, no savings. She is unable to provide the security and stability these children deserve, the lawyer declared. Mr. Blackwell offers not only financial resources, but also a safe, nurturing environment. Camille's nails dug into her palms. Safe? Nurturing? He had been absent for 4 years. When her turn came, Ms. Parker rose. "Your Honor, my client has raised these children single-handedly since birth. She has worked tirelessly, sacrificed her own future, and provided them with the most important thing God money cannot buy. Love. Mr. Blackwell is a stranger to them. A rich stranger, yes, but still a stranger." Camille's throat tightened as the judge's eyes slid to her. "Ms. Johnson, do you have anything to add?" Her knees shook as she stood. She looked at Damien, calm, arrogant, unyielding, and then at her children, sitting small and confused on the bench. "I may not have his money," she said, her voice trembling but strong, "but I've been there every day of their lives. I've held them through fevers, stayed up through nightmares, worked shifts until my feet bled just to make sure they had food. They don't need mansions. They need love. They need me." The courtroom fell silent. Even Damien's eyes flickered, just for a second, at the fire in her voice. The judge cleared his throat. "This case is complex. For now, I'm granting temporary joint custody. The children will spend alternating weeks with each parent until a final decision is reached." Camille's stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. The gavel struck. Decision made. After court, Camille stormed into the hallway, fury boiling. Damien followed at a measured pace, his expression infuriatingly calm. "You set this up," she spat. He raised a brow. "I didn't twist the judge's arm. You wanted a fight. Now you have one." Her eyes burned. "They're not chess pieces, Damien." "No," he agreed softly, stepping closer until his presence consumed her. "They're my children, and I don't share what's mine, not forever." Camille's heart pounded, her anger mixing with a dangerous heat she despised. She shoved past him, clutching the custody papers, but his voice followed her down the hall, low and deadly certain. "You won't win, Camille. You can't, because I'll burn the world down before I let anyone take them from me." The first week of shared custody was torture. Dropping the children at Damien's mansion felt like ripping her heart from her chest. They barely looked back, too dazzled by the glittering chandeliers and promises of swimming pools. Camille forced a smile, kissed their cheeks, and whispered, "I'll see you soon." But as she walked back down those marble steps, her vision blurred with tears. That night, she lay in her empty apartment, the silence crushing. For the first time in 4 years, she had no tiny voices asking for water, no giggles in the dark. She curled into herself and sobbed until dawn. At Damien's mansion, the triplets were chaos incarnate. They spilled juice on Persian rugs, left crayons on velvet sofas, and turned his pristine library into a fortress of blankets. Damien, a man who once ruled boardrooms with iron precision, found himself chasing toddlers down hallways. At first, frustration simmered, but when Marcus climbed into his lap with a picture book, when Maya wrapped her arms around his neck without hesitation, when Jordan fell asleep on his chest, something inside him cracked. He stared down at their tiny, sleeping faces and felt an ache he hadn't known in years. He wanted more, not just of them, of her. The Blackwell mansion had never known noise like this. For years, its grand marble halls echoed only with the clicking of polished shoes, the low murmur of staff, the occasional clink of crystal glasses. Order, silence, control. Now, chaos reigned. "Daddy, Jordan spilled juice on the big chair." "Not my fault. Marcus bumped me." "Where's the puppy you promised?" 3 small voices ricocheted off chandeliers worth more than most houses, filling the air with laughter, shrieks, and demands. Damien Blackwell, ruthless billionaire, master of boardrooms, stood in the center of his own empire, looking utterly undone. He had thought managing children would be like managing business: rules, discipline, strategy. Instead, the triplets had stormed into his world, like hurricanes wrapped in tiny bodies. By noon, on their first full day with him, there was orange juice staining a Louis Vuitton rug, Lego towers blocking the hallway, and an entire staff of maids whispering in shock as their employer attempted, and failed, to braid Maya's hair. Camille knew something was off the moment she pulled into the driveway that evening. She hadn't meant to come by. The court order gave Damien full authority during his week, but her heart couldn't take the silence of her apartment. She had told herself she was only coming to check in. When the butler opened the door, her suspicions were confirmed. The man's usual composure was cracked, his voice strained. "Ms. Johnson, perhaps you should see for yourself." Camille stepped inside and nearly burst out laughing. There, in the middle of the grand living room, sat Damien Blackwell, the mighty billionaire, his tie discarded, his sleeves rolled to his forearms, hair mussed in a way she'd never seen. He had one child asleep on his chest, another curled at his side, and the third attempting to braid what looked like a tie around his wrist, and he looked exhausted. "Good Lord," Camille whispered. Damien's head snapped up, his eyes flashing. "What are you doing here?" "I should be asking you the same thing," she said, trying not to smile. "You look like you survived a war." He scowled, though the effect was softened by the child drooling on his Armani shirt. "They don't listen." "They're children," she said dryly, stepping closer. "They're not supposed to." He shot her a glare, but she noticed how carefully his arm cradled Jordan, how gently his hand rested on Marcus's curls. Her heart wavered. The kids woke soon after, squealing with delight when they saw their mother. "Mommy, Daddy let us swim in the pool." "Mommy, Daddy can't cook pancakes, he burned them." "Mommy, Daddy read the same story 3 times, and he used funny voices." Camille's jaw dropped. "Funny voices?" Damien's ears turned slightly red. They insisted. The children tugged her hands, dragging her into their whirlwind of stories, and though she wanted to stay angry, she couldn't ignore the way their eyes sparkled, the way they spoke of Damien with pure excitement. When they finally darted off to play, Camille turned back to him. "So, billionaire extraordinaire can't handle 3 4-year-olds? Color me shocked." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "They're relentless." She folded her arms. "Welcome to my world." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the air between them shifted. She saw not the ruthless tycoon, but a man out of his depth, trying, fumbling, to bridge 4 lost years. It unsettled her. Later that evening, as Camille prepared to leave, She found herself lingering. The triplets begged to show her their new bedrooms, each decorated lavishly. Marcus had a room painted with planets and stars. Maya's bed was draped in pink silk with shelves of dolls. Jordan's shelves were already stacked with toy cars Damien had ordered in bulk. The children glowed with joy, but when Camille tucked them in, Marcus whispered, "Mummy, can't you stay here too, so you and Daddy can both be with us?" Her throat closed. She smoothed his curls and kissed his forehead. "I'll always be with you, baby, even if I'm not in the same house." But when she looked up, Damien was standing in the doorway, watching, unreadable. "Downstairs," she confronted him. "You can't buy their love with silk sheets and toys." His jaw tightened. "You think this is about buying them?" "Isn't it?" she shot back. "Every move you make is about showing them you have what I don't. The mansion, the pool, the toys. You're trying to make me look small." His eyes flared. "You don't need my help to look small. But understand this, Camille. I will never apologize for giving them everything. I lost 4 years. I won't lose another day." Her chest ached. "And where does that leave me?" His gaze dropped to her lips before snapping back to her eyes, his voice rough. "That depends on you." The silence between them stretched, thick and charged. She hated him, but she couldn't ignore the pull, the dangerous heat simmering under his cool mask. Finally, she turned away. "Good night, Mr. Blackwell." When she left, Damien lingered in the children's rooms, watching their small chests rise and fall in sleep. For the first time in years, he didn't pour himself a drink or bury himself in work. He simply sat there, in the quiet, surrounded by crayons on the floor and tiny socks left scattered like confetti. And he realized he was afraid, not of boardroom losses, not of rival tycoons, but of Camille Johnson, the woman who could destroy him simply by walking away. Camille told herself she was only going to the mansion to drop off paperwork. That was all, nothing more. The custody judge had requested updated school records, medical histories, vaccination reports, the usual endless trail of forms that came with raising children. Damien's lawyer had asked her to deliver copies directly, so she came, papers in hand, spine stiff, eyes focused. But walking into that mansion again was a mistake. The children weren't there that evening. Damien had arranged for them to stay with her overnight, a rare compromise in their turbulent schedule. The house was quieter without their laughter, eerily still. Yet Camille felt no relief. Every step on the marble floors echoed too loudly. A butler led her into Damien's private office. She had expected glass and steel, cold and impersonal, like the man himself. But what she saw instead startled her. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled not just with ledgers and law books, but novels, poetry, even children's classics. A chess set sat mid-game on a side table. A single photograph rested on his desk, not of corporate partners or glamorous women, but of a young Damien, barely a teenager, standing stiffly beside an older man whose hand gripped his shoulder with bruising force. Camille frowned. "Curious, aren't you?" His voice came from behind her. She spun, clutching the folder, her heart leaping into her throat. Damien leaned casually against the doorframe, tie loosened, top buttons undone, sleeves rolled. He looked less like a billionaire tycoon and more like a man. "What are you doing sneaking up on me?" She snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. "It's my house," he said smoothly, stepping closer. "And my office." His gaze flicked to the papers in her hands. "I assume those are for me." She thrust them out, her chin lifted. "School and medical records, everything you need for the custody hearing." He took them, but instead of setting them down, he lingered close, too close. The faint scent of his cologne, wood and smoke, wrapped around her like an invisible snare. "You hate being here," he murmured, studying her face. "Because I don't belong here," she shot back, his eyes narrowed. "That's where you're wrong." Camille's breath caught. "Don't." "Don't what?" His voice was softer now, velvet-edged with danger. "Don't tell you the truth." Her pulse thundered. "Don't play games with me, Damien. I'm not one of your board members you can manipulate. I'm the woman you abandoned." His jaw clenched, but his eyes burned. "I never abandoned you. I didn't know." "That's a convenient excuse," she spat. "4 years of struggle, of loneliness, of raising 3 children while you lived like a king. And you didn't know?" "I would have been there," he said roughly, stepping closer until she was forced back against the edge of his desk. His hands braced on either side of her, trapping her without touching. His voice dropped lower. "If I had known, I would have been there. Don't doubt that." Her chest heaved, the heat radiating from him, the intensity in his eyes. It was too much. She wanted to shove him away, yet part of her body betrayed her, trembling not from anger, but from something she refused to name. "Let me go," she whispered. He didn't move. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering. "Tell me you don't feel this," he murmured. "I don't." "Liar." The word was a growl, and then his mouth was on hers. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't tender, it was fire meeting fire. Years of anger, resentment, and unspoken longing colliding in a single scorching kiss. Camille gasped, her fists curling against his chest, ready to push him away. But the taste of him, the heat, the way his hand slid to the small of her back, pulling her closer, it unraveled her. For a heartbeat, she let herself sink into it. She let herself remember the man from that night years ago, the man who had looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. Then reality crashed back. She shoved him hard, breaking the kiss, her chest heaving. "Don't ever—" Her voice shook. "Don't you dare!" Damien's breathing was ragged too, his eyes blazing. "You think you can deny it? You think I didn't feel you kiss me back?" Her face flushed hot. That was a mistake. His lips curved in a dangerous smile. "The first honest moment we've had in years. And you call it a mistake?" She glared at him, fury and confusion twisting inside her. "This doesn't change anything. You're still the man trying to take my children. You're still the man who ruined my life." "And yet," he said softly, stepping closer again, though not touching her this time, "you're still drawn to me." Her throat tightened. She hated him for saying it, hated him more for being right. "Stay away from me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Stay away from my heart. I won't let you hurt me again." For the first time, Damien's expression softened, almost pained. "Camille." He reached out, but she pulled back, snatching her purse. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice trembling. "And if you ever try that again, I'll make sure the judge knows exactly what kind of man you are." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Damien stayed behind, alone in the office, staring at the empty doorway. He pressed his fingers to his lips, where her taste still lingered, and for the first time in years, Damien Blackwell, the man who never lost, realized he was in dangerous territory, because he wasn't sure if he wanted to win against Camille Johnson or surrender completely. Camille woke to the sound of her phone buzzing non-stop on the nightstand. The harsh vibration rattled against the wood, over and over, until she groaned and rolled over to snatch it up. She didn't expect the screen to be flooded with messages. "Girl, is this you? Check the shade room. You trending. Camille, call me right now." Her stomach dropped. With trembling hands, she tapped the first link. A headline screamed back at her. "Billionaire Damien Blackwell's hood rat baby mama. Meet the woman who snared Atlanta's most eligible bachelor." Her blood froze. Beneath it, photos. grainy shots of her walking into Damien's mansion, holding the triplets' hands. Another picture of her in her diner uniform, greasy apron, hair tied back. A third photo, the worst, of her old apartment complex, trash overflowing near the dumpsters. Her hands shook as she scrolled. The article was merciless. Sources say Damien Blackwell has been forced into fatherhood after discovering the existence of 3 children, allegedly his, being raised in poverty by an uneducated waitress. Insiders claim the woman, Camille Johnson, has been leveraging her children to secure access to Blackwell's fortune. A gold digger in disguise, or a victim of chance? Time will tell. Camille's breath stuttered, her vision blurred, her heart pounded so loud she thought it would break through her ribs. Mommy, Maya's sleepy voice came from the doorway. Why's your phone making that noise? Camille quickly stuffed the phone under a pillow, forcing a shaky smile. Nothing, baby. Go back to bed. But when Maya shuffled closer, Camille saw curiosity in her daughter's wide eyes. And worse, confusion. Because even at 4, Maya could tell something was wrong. By morning, the nightmare had spread. Paparazzi swarmed outside her building, cameras flashing as Camille tried to usher the triplets into her beat-up sedan. Camille, is it true you tricked Damien Blackwell into fatherhood? Are you after his money? How much is he paying you for child support? Camille shielded the children with her arms, pushing through the chaos. Back off, she snapped, fury lacing her voice. But the cameras kept flashing, blinding, merciless. Jordan clung to her waist, sobbing. Mommy, why are they yelling at you? Her throat closed. It's okay, baby. It's okay. She shoved them into the car, heart hammering, and sped off with shaking hands. Damien's phone rang in his office that same morning. His lawyer's voice was sharp. It's Vanessa. Damien's jaw clenched. Of course it was. Vanessa Green, his former fiancée, socialite, daughter of Atlanta's most ruthless real estate tycoon. They had broken off their engagement 2 years ago when Damien realized she wanted his name, not his heart. But Vanessa had never forgiven him. Now she was back. Damien's assistant patched the call through before he could stop it. Vanessa's voice oozed like poison through the line. Well, Damien, seems you've been busy. Vanessa, he said flatly. 3 children, really? And with a diner waitress? Oh, the society pages are having a field day. She laughed, sharp and cruel. Do you know what they're calling her? The Ghetto Cinderella. Damien's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles whitened. Stay out of this, Vanessa. Oh, darling, I'm just getting started. You humiliated me when you ended our engagement. Now the city finally sees the kind of man you really are. Bedding waitresses, hiding children. What will your investors say? What about your board? His voice dropped to a lethal growl. If you so much as touch Camille. Vanessa cut him off, her voice purring. She doesn't belong in your world, Damien, and I'll make sure everyone knows it. The line went dead. That evening, Camille's landlord knocked on her door. He was a stocky man with thinning hair, eyes avoiding hers. Camille, look, I don't want trouble, but with all this press, the building owner says you're attracting the wrong kind of attention. Paparazzi, reporters, people sniffing around. It's bad for the other tenants. Her stomach dropped. You're kicking us out? He rubbed the back of his neck. I'm sorry, you've got 30 days. Tears pricked her eyes. 30 days. No job, no savings. 3 children. Her world was collapsing. She didn't want to call Damien. She wanted to handle it herself, to prove she didn't need him. But by the time the second reporter shoved a microphone in her face while she was buying groceries, Camille cracked. She dialed his number with shaking fingers. He answered on the first ring. Camille? Her voice trembled. This is your fault. Silence crackled on the line. They're calling me names. They're scaring the children. I lost my job, my home. And now my babies are asking why people hate me." Her voice broke, hot tears spilling down her cheeks. "This is because of you." Damien's voice was low, dangerous. "Where are you?" She hesitated. "Why?" "Where?" The force in his tone made her answer. 10 minutes later, his black SUV pulled up outside the grocery store. Paparazzi swarmed, but Damien's security team pushed them back. Damien himself strode out, his presence sucking the air from the street. When Camille saw him, something inside her snapped. She marched up, fury blazing. "Tell them to stop," she shouted, shoving her phone at him. "Tell Vanessa, or whoever's feeding this, to leave me alone." He cupped her elbow, pulling her close, his voice a hiss. "Vanessa." Her stomach twisted. "Your ex-fiancée?" "She's behind this." His jaw flexed. "She won't stop unless I make her." Camille yanked her arm free. "Then make her." And to her shock, he did. The next morning, Damien held a press conference on the steps of his corporate headquarters. Reporters filled the plaza, cameras rolling. Vanessa was there too, smug in a red designer dress. But Damien didn't flinch. He stood tall, dark suit gleaming, and spoke into the microphone with a voice that cut through the chaos. "The woman you've been attacking is named Camille Johnson. She is not a gold digger. She is not a scandal. She is the mother of my children, and anyone who disrespects her disrespects me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's smirk faltered. "I will not tolerate lies about her," Damien continued. "She raised our children with strength and sacrifice while I was absent. That makes her worth more than any title, any fortune, any so-called pedigree. She is part of my family. That is the truth." The plaza exploded with questions. Vanessa's face turned white with rage. Camille, watching from her small apartment, covered her mouth with her hands, because for the first time, Damien had publicly chosen her. That night, Camille's phone buzzed again, messages from neighbors, from strangers. "Girl, he defended you on live TV. He called you family. Maybe he ain't so bad after all." Camille sat on the couch, the triplets asleep beside her, her heart in turmoil. She hated Damien, resented him, feared him, but when she replayed his words, "She is the mother of my children. She is part of my family," her chest tightened with something far more dangerous than anger. Hope. The gala had been Damien's idea. "Public image matters," he'd said. "If people see us together, united for the children, it strengthens our case in court. It silences Vanessa. It shows stability." Camille had wanted to refuse. She hated the idea of stepping into his glittering world again, hated the thought of standing under chandeliers while people whispered behind her back. But when the triplets begged to go, excited about fancy clothes and all the food, she couldn't say no. So here she was, in a borrowed dress that hugged her curves too tightly, walking into a ballroom dripping with gold and crystal. Cameras flashed as they entered side by side, Damien's hand firm at the small of her back, the children clutching her fingers. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "That's her? The waitress with his kids? She doesn't belong here." Camille held her head high, ignoring the stares, but every word cut her deeper than she let show. Damien noticed, his hand pressed more firmly against her spine, guiding her through the throng like a shield. His voice, low and commanding, murmured in her ear, "Ignore them. They don't matter." Easy for him to say. For a while, everything went smoothly. The children dazzled in miniature suits and a satin dress. Maya twirled on the dance floor, her giggles echoing like bells. Marcus stuffed himself with hors d'oeuvres. Jordan clutched Damien's hand, wide-eyed at the glittering lights. For the first time that night, Camille allowed herself to breathe. Maybe they could get through this. But then, in the chaos of photographers and guests, It happened. "Where's Jordan?" The words left Camille's mouth like a scream. She spun, scanning the crowd. Marcus and Maya were beside her, but Jordan was gone. Her blood ran cold. "Jordan!" she cried, panic slicing her chest. She shoved past glittering gowns and tuxedos, her voice raw. "Jordan!" The room blurred, people turned, whispering, watching her unravel. She didn't care, she couldn't breathe. Damien was already moving, his voice sharp and commanding as he barked orders into his earpiece. Security fanned out instantly, the entire gala grinding to a halt. "Find him!" Damien growled. His face was carved in stone, but his eyes were wild. Camille's hands shook as she clutched Marcus and Maya close. "This is your fault," she spat, tears streaming down her face. "If you hadn't dragged us here—" Damien's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. His gaze swept the room like a predator hunting prey. "Stay here, don't move." And then he was gone. Minutes stretched into hours, or maybe they only felt that way. Camille's knees buckled, but she refused to sit. Every second without Jordan was agony, a knife twisting deeper. She thought of his laugh, the way he loved cars, the way he still slipped into her bed at night when thunderstorms scared him. Her baby, her sweet boy. Please God, not him. Take anything else, but not him. Maya sobbed against her hip. Marcus whimpered, "Mommy, where's Jojo?" "I'll find him," Camille whispered, though her voice shook. "Daddy's finding him right now." Her own words cut her. Daddy, Damien. And yet, she clung to the thought, because right now, Damien was her only hope. Damien stormed through the service hallways of the hotel, flanked by 2 guards. His heart thundered in a way no boardroom or hostile takeover had ever provoked. Jordan, his son, missing. Cold fear gripped him, colder than any failure he had ever known. He barked into his earpiece, "Lock every exit. Nobody leaves this building until I say so." They scoured the kitchens, the stairwells, the storage rooms. Damien's mind raced with images he couldn't allow. Strangers' hands on Jordan, the boy's small voice calling for help. Not his son, not his blood. Finally, a guard's voice crackled through the radio. "We've got something." Damien sprinted, shoving doors open until he burst into the dimly lit coat room. And there, small, trembling, clutching a red toy car in his fist, was Jordan. The boy's big eyes were wet with tears. "I got lost," he whispered, his voice breaking. Damien dropped to his knees, scooping him into his arms. Relief crashed through him so violently it stole his breath. He held Jordan close, his hand cradling the back of the boy's head, his own chest shaking. "I've got you," Damien whispered, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't contain. "You're safe. I've got you, son." When Damien carried Jordan back into the ballroom, Camille nearly collapsed. A sob tore from her throat as she ran forward, yanking her son from Damien's arms into her own. "Oh, baby," she cried, kissing his wet cheeks. "Oh, my sweet boy, don't you ever do that again. Don't you ever scare Mommy like that again." Jordan clung to her, crying into her neck. "I just wanted to see the cars outside. I didn't know where you were." Camille rocked him, tears streaming down her face. Relief flooded every inch of her. When she finally looked up, Damien was watching her. His own chest rose and fell unevenly, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with something she couldn't name. For a moment they simply stared at each other across their child's head. 2 enemies, 2 parents, bound by a fear that had nearly destroyed them both. Finally, Damien spoke, his voice low, rough. "He's safe. That's all that matters." Camille nodded, unable to trust her voice. But in that moment, something inside her shifted. Because for the first time, she saw him not as a billionaire, not as an enemy, not even as the man who had broken her years ago. She saw him as a father, a terrified, desperate father who had almost lost his son, and it broke her. The gala ended in chaos. The press swarmed, hungry for the story, but Damien's security forced them back. He escorted Camille and the children to the waiting car himself, his hand steady on her back as if to anchor her. Inside, the triplets huddled together, exhausted and shaken. Camille sat with them, stroking their hair, whispering comforts. Damien sat across from them, silent, his gaze fixed on the children like he couldn't look away. Finally, Camille lifted her eyes to him. "Thank you," she whispered, his jaw tightened. "Don't thank me." But his voice cracked, just slightly. That night, long after the children had fallen asleep in her bed, Camille sat alone in the dark, trembling. She thought of Damien's face in the coat room, raw and unguarded, as he held Jordan. She thought of his voice, breaking when he whispered son, and she thought of how, for one terrible, beautiful moment, she had felt like they weren't enemies at all, like they were a family. Her heart ached, her mind screamed to resist, but deep inside, Camille knew the truth. She was losing her battle, not just in court, not just in the eyes of her children, in her own heart. The city never slept, but Damien Blackwell's empire thrived on its constant pulse. That morning, his office tower loomed like a beacon, windows glittering with the promise of power and profit. Inside, Damien sat at the head of a mahogany table, surrounded by board members, lawyers, and investors. It was supposed to be the most important deal of his career, a merger worth billions, a chance to expand his legacy beyond Atlanta, to stamp the Blackwell name across continents. Every eye in the room watched him like hawks, waiting for his command. But Damien wasn't listening. His mind replayed the image of Jordan's tear-streaked face, Marcus's sobs, Maya's trembling voice. He saw Camille crumpling in relief as she clutched their son to her chest. He heard her whisper, raw, breaking, "Don't you ever scare Mommy like that again." He had never been so afraid, not in hostile takeovers, not in moments when fortunes hung by a thread. Nothing had ever undone him the way nearly losing his son had. And it hit him like a truth too sharp to ignore. All the money in the world meant nothing if he lost them. "Mr. Blackwell?" a board member pressed, pulling him back. "Do we move forward with signing?" Damien's gaze dropped to the contracts. The ink was ready. His empire demanded it. But Camille's words from that night echoed in his chest. "They don't need your empire. They need love." He set the pen down. "No," he said simply. The room froze. "Excuse me?" one investor stammered. Damien's voice cut through the stunned silence. "This merger would move my attention overseas. It would take me away for months, maybe years. That's not acceptable." "Sir," his CFO said carefully, "we're talking about billions." The board. "I don't care," Damien snapped, his eyes flashing. "This deal is over. Blackwell Corporation stays here." Gasps rippled around the table. The CFO looked pale. "You'll lose investors." "Then let them walk," Damien said coldly. "My family comes first." The words left his mouth before he realized he'd said them out loud. Family. For the first time in years, Damien Blackwell chose something other than power. Camille didn't know about the sacrifice. Not yet. She only knew she was struggling through another sleepless night, torn between gratitude and fear after the gala incident. The triplets were finally asleep, but her own thoughts wouldn't stop. She sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands, when a knock rattled her door. Her chest clenched. Only one man knocked like that. She opened it to find Damien, drenched from the rain, no chauffeur, no guards, just him. Her guard shot up instantly. "What do you want?" He looked at her, eyes dark, jaw set, but there was something different in his expression. Less steel, more storm. I walked away from a billion-dollar deal today, he said. She blinked, stunned. What? I could have signed, he continued, stepping inside uninvited. It would have secured Blackwell Corp's future for the next decade. It would have expanded everything I've built, but it would have taken me away from Atlanta, away from them. Her heart stuttered. And you chose not to? I chose them, he said simply, his gaze locked on hers. I chose you. Camille froze. For a moment the sound of rain filled the silence. She wanted to scoff, to accuse him of exaggeration, but there was no arrogance in his tone, no smugness in his eyes, only raw, unguarded truth. Why? She whispered. He stepped closer. Because I'm done building towers if they leave me empty. I've built an empire, Camille. But none of it means a damn thing without my children. Without... He hesitated, his voice cracking. Without you. Her chest ached. Tears pricked her eyes, but she shook her head, fighting them back. Don't say that. You don't mean it. I've never meant anything more. Her hands trembled. You hurt me, Damien. You weren't there when I needed you most. Do you know what it's like to cry yourself to sleep every night, terrified you won't be able to feed your babies? His voice was rough. Number I don't, and I can't erase that, but I can give you something else. I can give you the man I should have been then, the father they deserve, the partner you deserve. The word partner made her heart lurch. Don't, she whispered again, but her voice was weaker now. Don't make promises you can't keep. His eyes burned. I don't break promises. For a long moment they stood in silence, the rain hammering the windows, his presence overwhelming her tiny apartment. Finally, she turned away, clutching the edge of the table like a lifeline. You think walking away from a deal makes you a saint? That I'll just fall at your feet because you sacrificed money you already have more than enough of? No, he said quietly. I think it shows you I'm willing to give up anything, everything, for you, for them. Her throat tightened. She hated him for saying it, hated him more for the way her heart wanted to believe it. Get out, she whispered, tears streaking her face. But before he left, he stepped close enough that she felt his warmth, smelled the faint trace of whiskey and rain on his skin. You can hate me, Camille, he murmured, but you can't deny this. I'm not leaving again, and whether you fight me or not, I'll prove it to you, every day. Then he left, the door clicking shut behind him. Camille sank into a chair, shaking, tears dripping onto her hands. She thought of his words, his sacrifice. I chose them. I chose you. And for the first time, she wondered if the man she hated might be the same man she once dreamed of loving. The next morning, the triplets chattered over breakfast. Daddy said he'll come to my school play. Daddy said he'll take us camping. Daddy said he'll never leave again. Camille stirred their cereal in silence, her chest tight. She looked at their glowing faces, at the hope in their voices, and she realized something terrifying. Damien wasn't just winning them over. He was winning her. Later, after breakfast devolved into sticky syrup-covered chaos, Camille went to wash her hands. Passing by Damien's study, she heard something that made her stop cold. A voice. His voice. Low, unsteady. She leaned closer. Through the cracked door, she saw him sitting on the floor in his pressed jeans, surrounded by the triplets. Maya sat cross-legged in front of him, braiding a doll's hair. Marcus fiddled with toy cars. Jordan sat on Damien's lap, holding a book. Damien's head was bent low, his usually commanding tone softened into something fragile. When I was your age, he said slowly, I didn't have a mommy like yours. Or even a daddy who cared. My father. He only wanted me to be strong. He never told me bedtime stories. He never hugged me. He never... His voice cracked, and he stopped, The children were watching him with wide eyes. Camille's breath caught in her chest. Jordan touched his cheek gently. "But you hug us, Daddy." Damien's throat worked, his voice hoarse. "Yes, I'll always hug you. I'll always be here. I'll never be like him." Camille pressed a hand over her mouth, her heart splintering. She had never imagined Damien Blackwell, arrogant, ruthless Damien, speaking like this, vulnerable, broken. She wanted to turn away, to give him privacy, but she couldn't move. She was rooted in place, tears burning her eyes. That evening, when the triplets collapsed into bed after an exhausting day of games, Camille went to the kitchen to fetch water. She nearly collided with Damien. He stood in the doorway, watching her silently. "You heard me," he said quietly, not a question. She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to." "It doesn't matter," he cut in. His voice was low, steady, but his eyes betrayed him. "You know now, you know the truth." Her throat tightened. "Damien." He stepped closer, shadows curling around him. "I never told anyone that, not even Vanessa, not even my board. You're the first." Her heart pounded. The weight of his confession pressed against her. For once he wasn't untouchable. He was raw, bare, bleeding. "Why me?" she whispered, his gaze locked with hers. "Because you're the only one who matters." The words stole her breath. Silence stretched, heavy, electric. He moved closer until there was barely an inch between them, his heat radiating into her skin. "You drive me insane," he murmured, his voice rough. "You fight me at every turn. You look at me like I'm a monster. But Camille, you also make me feel alive. You make me want to be a better man." Her body trembled. She wanted to step back, to flee, but her feet stayed planted. "Damien, this isn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "We're supposed to be enemies." His lips curved, a ghost of a smile. "Then why do you look at me like that?" She realized with horror that her eyes had dropped to his mouth. She snapped them back up, cheeks burning. He leaned closer, his voice barely a breath. "Tell me you don't feel it, and I'll walk away." Her chest heaved. She opened her mouth, but no words came, because she couldn't lie. And he saw it. His hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch so gentle it made her knees weaken. "Camille," he whispered. Her heart screamed at her to run, but her body leaned closer, just as their lips almost touched. "Mommy, Daddy." Maya's voice pierced the air, the sound of small feet pattering down the hall. Camille jerked back like she'd been burned, her hand flying to her chest. Damien's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening as he took a step back. By the time Maya ran into the kitchen, dragging her doll, both adults were standing apart, pretending nothing had happened. But Camille's pulse refused to slow, and Damien's eyes, even in the dim light, still burned with the truth. The walls between them were breaking. That night, Camille lay awake on the guest bed Damien had offered her. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning. She had seen him with the children, heard him confess his pain, felt the truth in his voice when he said she was the only one who mattered. And though she fought it with every ounce of her strength, her heart whispered the most dangerous thought of all. What if he really had changed? Camille woke the next morning to the sound of laughter. Not her children's usual shrieks, but a deep, rumbling sound she had never heard before. Damien. She sat up, confused, her heart thudding as she followed the sound down the hallway. She stopped at the open playroom door. There he was, Damien Blackwell, the man who terrified entire boardrooms, sitting cross-legged on the floor in sweatpants, letting Marcus and Jordan climb all over him like he was a jungle gym. Maya sat beside him, braiding his hair with colorful toy clips, and he was laughing, really laughing. The sight pierced Camille's chest. He looked so human, not the ruthless billionaire, not the arrogant man she had cursed every night for 4 years, just a father, just a man. Her throat tightened as she watched him lift Marcus high in the air, spinning him until the boy squealed, "Higher, Daddy, higher!" "Daddy," Jordan echoed, tugging his sleeve. "Me next." Camille's vision blurred. That one word, Daddy, so natural on their lips, hit her harder than any insult, harder than any fight. She turned quickly, afraid he might see the tears threatening to fall, but she wasn't quick enough. "Camille," Damien's voice called softly behind her. She froze, then slowly turned. His eyes were on her, his expression unreadable. The children whined when he stood. "Don't go, Daddy." "I'll be right back," he promised, his gaze still locked on Camille. Her heart pounded as he crossed the hall toward her. In the quiet of the kitchen, away from little eyes and ears, Camille tried to compose herself. She busied her hands with mugs and the coffee pot, desperate for distraction. "Coffee?" she asked stiffly, her back to him. "I don't want coffee," he said. His voice was low, steady, but charged. She set the pot down, bracing her hands on the counter. "Then what do you want?" There was silence, heavy. Then footsteps, closing the space between them. She could feel his heat at her back before he even spoke. "You!" Her breath hitched. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. "Damien, I can't fight it anymore," he interrupted, his voice rough, almost desperate. "I tried. I told myself it was just the children, just responsibility, but every time I see you, every time you walk into a room..." His jaw tightened. "You undo me." Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Don't what? Don't tell you the truth? Don't admit I can't go a single night without thinking of you?" He stepped closer, his eyes burning into hers. "I've built empires, Camille. I've won wars in boardrooms, but I'm losing this battle with you. I'm losing, and I don't even care." Her lips parted, but no words came. "I need to know," he said, his voice breaking now. "Do you feel it too? Or am I alone in this madness?" Her eyes stung with tears. She wanted to say no, to push him away. She wanted to protect herself from the storm he carried. But she couldn't lie. Not when her body trembled at his nearness. Not when her heart pounded like a drum begging to be heard. "Yes," she whispered. "I feel it." Damien's breath caught. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then he closed the distance. His mouth claimed hers in a kiss that was nothing like the firestorm of their first. This one was deeper, slower, filled with years of longing and unspoken words. Camille melted against him before she realized she had moved, her hands gripping his shirt as if to anchor herself. He groaned softly against her lips, pulling her closer, his arms wrapping around her like he'd never let go. Her mind screamed warnings. "He'll break you. He'll ruin you. He's still Damien Blackwell." But her heart drowned it out. For the first time in years, she let herself feel. The kiss deepened, grew urgent, their bodies pressed flush as if making up for lost time. Camille's knees weakened, but his grip held her firm. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless, their foreheads pressed together. "Camille," he whispered, his voice raw, "I've never wanted anyone the way I want you. Not Vanessa, not anyone, only you." Her eyes searched his, desperate for lies, but all she saw was truth, terrifying, beautiful truth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You hurt me so much," she whispered. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it right," he vowed. His thumb brushed her tears away, tender where once he'd been cold. "Give me the chance." Her heart ached, every instinct screamed to resist, but her soul whispered what her lips had already confessed. She felt it too. A sudden giggle shattered the moment. They turned to find Maya standing in the doorway, her doll tucked under her arm. "You kissed!" she squealed, eyes wide with delight. "Mommy and Daddy kissed!" Camille's face flushed crimson. Damien straightened, his mask sliding back into place, but not before Camille saw the flicker of a smile tug at his lips. "Back to your brothers," Damien said smoothly, though his voice was still husky. "We'll be there soon." Maya darted off, singing, "Mommy loves Daddy," down the hall. Camille groaned, covering her face. "Oh, God," Damien chuckled low in his chest, a sound she'd never heard from him before. "Well, she's not wrong." Her hands dropped, her eyes snapping to his. "Don't say that." "Why not?" He stepped closer again, his tone softer now. "It's the truth, and I think you know it." Her chest tightened. She couldn't deny it. Not anymore. But admitting it aloud felt like stepping off a cliff. "Damien," she whispered, "I don't know if I can survive you a second time." His eyes softened, vulnerability piercing through the steel. "Then don't survive me," he murmured. "Let me love you." The words hit her like lightning. She couldn't respond. She couldn't breathe. And for the first time in years, Camille Johnson, the woman who had sworn to hate him forever, felt herself teetering on the edge of surrender. That night, long after the children were asleep, Camille lay in her borrowed bed, staring into the dark. Her lips still burned from his kiss. Her heart still raced with the memory of his words. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, whispering to the shadows, "What if he really means it?" And in the silence, she realized the truth she feared most of all. She wasn't just falling for him again. She had never stopped. The city buzzed with anticipation. By the afternoon, Camille's name, a woman who had once been invisible, forgotten by society, was splashed across headlines again. Blackwell heir, custody battle explodes. Billionaire's abandoned children revealed. Camille Johnson, gold digger or mother of the year. Vanessa Price breaks. Silence. Those kids don't belong in his world. The media frenzy was unbearable. Photographers stalked her apartment. Gossip blogs twisted every word she'd ever spoken. Even her diner friends had gone silent, unsure how to stand beside her in the firestorm. But the only thing that truly broke Camille was hearing Marcus whisper as she tucked him in the night before. "Mommy, if Daddy doesn't want us, do we go back to being just us again?" She had choked back tears, kissing his forehead. "He wants you," she whispered, even as her own heart wavered. "Daddy wants you." But did he want her? That was the question she couldn't silence. The answer came the next morning when Damien appeared at her door. No sleek suit, no entourage. Just him, in a charcoal coat, his jaw set with determination. "Come with me," he said, her eyes narrowed. "To where?" "You'll see." Before she could argue, Marcus and Maya ran to him, Jordan trailing close behind. "Daddy!" they cried, leaping into his arms. He gathered them easily, his face softening in a way that still startled Camille every time. "Get dressed," Damien told her quietly. "All of you." Against her better judgment, she obeyed. Something in his voice told her this wasn't about boardrooms or power. This was about them. An hour later, Camille found herself walking into the grandest ballroom in Atlanta, the same ballroom where the gala had ended in disaster weeks ago. But now it was filled not with sneering aristocrats and investors, but with cameras, journalists, and reporters. Her stomach dropped. "Damien, what is this?" He placed a steady hand at the small of her back. "The truth." Before she could demand more, Damien stepped onto the stage at the center of the room. Flashbulbs erupted instantly, journalists shouting questions. "Mr. Blackwell, is it true the triplets are yours? Are you abandoning your empire for a waitress? Is Camille Johnson your mistress?" Damien raised a hand. The room fell silent. His voice cut through the tension like steel. 4 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I turned my back on something priceless, my own blood. Camille Johnson gave me 3 miracles: Maya, Marcus, and Jordan. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Camille froze, her heart hammering in her chest. Damien's gaze sought her out, locking onto her as he continued. For years, she raised them alone, without my help, without my name, without the empire I could have offered, and she raised them beautifully. They are smart, they are brave, they are kind, they are mine, and they are hers. Tears blurred Camille's vision. From this day forward, Damien declared, his voice thunderous now, I will never let them doubt who they belong to. I will never let anyone question the worth of their mother. Camille Johnson is not a gold digger. She is not a scandal. She is the strongest woman I have ever known, and she is the only woman I have ever loved. The ballroom erupted, cameras flashing, reporters shouting, voices clamoring for more. But Camille heard none of it. Her ears rang with one phrase, echoing like a promise carved into her soul. The only woman I have ever loved. Damien extended a hand toward her from the stage. Her knees trembled as she walked forward, the triplets at her side. When she reached him, he pulled her up beside him, wrapping an arm firmly around her waist. This is my family, he said simply, and nothing will take them from me. The room exploded again, but Camille hardly noticed. She turned to him, her lips trembling. You said... I meant it. Damien cut her off, his voice low, meant only for her. I love you, Camille. I loved you from the moment I saw you. I was too much of a coward to admit it, but not anymore. Never again. And before she could speak, before the crowd could even process it, Damien Blackwell bent his head and kissed her. It wasn't the tentative kiss of the kitchen, nor the desperate kiss of confession. This was a claim, a vow, a declaration to the entire world. Camille melted into him, her hands fisting in his coat, her body trembling as the crowd roared. For the first time in years, she wasn't ashamed. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't just surviving. She was loved. Of course, Vanessa Price couldn't let the moment pass unchallenged. She stormed into the ballroom like a storm cloud, her designer heels striking the marble with fury. This is a circus, she shouted. You can't tie yourself to her. She's beneath you, Damien. Those children don't belong in your world. Gasps rippled again. Cameras turned, eager for blood. Damien's eyes narrowed, his arm tightening protectively around Camille. Say one more word about them, he said, his voice ice. One more word, Vanessa, and I'll destroy you in ways you can't imagine. These children are my world. And Camille? His gaze softened, but his voice remained steady. Camille is my heart, which means she outranks every investor, every contract, and certainly you. Vanessa's face drained of color. For once, she had no retort. She turned on her heel and stormed out, humiliated, whispers chasing her like wolves. Afterward, as the reporters were pushed back and security restored order, Damien led Camille and the children outside into the cool evening air. The triplets were buzzing with excitement. Did you see, Mommy? Daddy told everyone we're his. Maya squealed. And he kissed you, Marcus added, grinning mischievously. Jordan tugged Camille's hand. Does that mean we're a family now? Camille's throat tightened. She looked up at Damien. His expression was soft, stripped of arrogance, stripped of pride. Just a man. Hopeful, terrified, in love. Yes, he said, answering for her. His hand covered hers. We're a family, forever. Camille's tears spilled freely now, but she smiled through them, finally allowing herself to believe it. For the first time, she wasn't alone. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. For the first time, she was home. Here comes the end of the story. If I was able to make your day comment. Mr. Hope, you made my day.